In today's podcast, I am pleased to be joined by the Head of Fraud and Compliance at the Star Sports bookmaking firm, Lee Gray. Welcome to the podcast, Lee. How are you?
Fine, thanks, Peter. Looking forward to this interview and see how far it goes.
Yeah, well, I've been really looking forward to speaking with you. It's part of a desire to learn more about how things work from the bookmaking side of things. I often talk to pro punters, but very rarely do I get someone that works at a bookmaker. There's currently, you'll be aware of this, lots of debate about bookmaking and changes that might be coming. And dare I say, a fair amount of dissatisfaction, especially with some of the bigger high street firms that are out there, the William Hills, the Paddy Powers, all these big well-known names. But first of all, before we get into that, I want to learn a little bit more about you, because I understand you are on both sides of the fence. You're both a punter and now somebody that works for a bookmaker. Talk me through your background and then we'll get into more on your role.
Yeah, sure. What it is, I was a civil servant for 33 years, working in a government agency. Predominantly the last 10 years was tackling fraud on benefits side of things. So I was used to the sort of customary compliance, but I was looking at the higher end, the prosecution side of things. So I was in charge of government prosecutions for benefit fraud, essentially. And after 33 years, I sort of had a midlife crisis. I didn't enjoy what I was doing anymore. And I'd previously worked for Star for 5 years, for 2 weeks, for the previous 5 years, helping them then with Cheltenham previews that they're quite famous for, and then working in the office for Cheltenham. And Star were going online in February 2017. So me being me, I decided there was a job opportunity to come up to run the Star online compliance and fraud section, of which there wasn't one. I jumped with both feet, started with a blank desk and a blank piece of paper. And that, as I say, that was 5 years ago. So that's basically my background. Had no background in the gambling industry prior to joining Star.
Yeah, and you were a punter as well. You were telling me prior to recording.
I'm a recreational punter. I've probably been betting since I was 18, obviously. Not very successful, but I'm recreational. So I do know what it is like from both sides of the fence.
Which is really important. So let's talk about what you do, what your role entails. So what is a compliance officer? What's your day-to-day like?
Right. Well, as it started, we started online 5 years ago. There was just me and half a member of staff. As everyone probably listening to this is aware, that the compliance sort of arena in the bookmaking side of the industry has just gone crazy over the last 5 years. So now I run a team there's 3 working with me, and then we've also got a support team that's got another 10 staff. So we've gone from 1.5 to 14, which probably shows you how much the environment has changed in the gambling industry. I'm actually responsible for Star brand, which incorporates retail, on-course, spread betting and online. But I will work with the team. Predominantly my work focuses on the online side of things, on the Star license. So predominantly we deal with a whole multitude of things, customer complaints, fraud inquiries, police inquiries, money laundering checks, affordability checks, social responsible gambling, to name but a few. I know a lot of the bigger firms have probably segregated the team, but we actually work as one team and cover all bases.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different topics to unpack there. There's a lot of things.
Yeah, I suppose from my government background, I always think it's probably better to make the job more interesting. We've tried to employ staff that cover a whole range of subjects. So you're not just doing one subject day in, day out, because it can become boring no matter how good or bad you are in it. So we've tried to train the team up to cover all angles. So we're all responsible for all parts of compliance and fraud under the Star online license. With regard to social responsibility, although it's just our responsibility, it's every member of staff in the Star Group responsibility for social responsible gambling, but we can obviously elaborate on that later on.
Of course, yes. So let's explore things from, let's say, the listener. There's a few different types of punters. Let's say, a general entry-level punter, maybe someone depositing, let's say, less than 250, maybe less than 500. And then we'll maybe go up to some of the mid and the high level and the extremely wealthy punters. Maybe you get some of them more on course as well. Do you have different brackets of customers where you have to employ different checks?
We started online and basically with a blank sheet of paper. So we were quite unique in some of the stuff we did. And me not being tarred with a sort of pre-online experience in the world, I sort of brought in rules that I thought were fair to the customer and fair to us. We were probably one of the only firms that, well, obviously we age verified, and that became mandatory.
Yeah.
I think it was in 2019, but we used to age verify everybody, regardless of whether they deposited. We also required KYC documents for every customer within 2 weeks. Now, a lot of firms didn't do that because a lot of people open up accounts and don't deposit, or only deposit £10. They don't feel that there's a need for a cost implication until someone actually starts spending. So we, at Star, we actually age verified because that's mandatory, but we actually require KYC documents from a customer within 2 weeks of them opening at the furthest. So they will be suspended after 2 weeks. They're suspended.
Is that industry standard then, Lee, the 2 weeks?
No, it's something that we've started in 2017 and we've carried on with it. A lot of firms out there won't ever ask for, if you don't hit certain thresholds, they won't ask for it. But we, across the board, we treat everyone the same. So everyone gets 2 weeks to supply their documents. In that time, they are free to bet. They've obviously age verified, of course.
Yeah.
They're free to bet. They're free to withdraw unless there's an issue around the account. So it's seamless, but after 2 weeks, we require them to supply certain documents. Otherwise, their account is suspended.
Okay. And then at what point do you start to run more checks? Because let's say within the first week, they start to deposit a lot more money. What is the process then, and how does it work in terms of when it comes across your desk or your team's desk to say, look, we need to have some more information on this particular customer?
Again, we'll treat everyone the same, but we have a number of, it's just gone mad over the last couple of years, but we have people monitoring hourly people, new customers and existing customers on deposits, bets, how long they've been in the account, how many payment declines they might be having. We have a monitoring trader chat. So we've got certain financial thresholds. If we will step in and suspend accounts, say, if they deposited 2,000 over a period of time, we will suspend them and ask for the KYC documents. Then other checks start kicking in. So we will be continually monitoring all customers. And I think that's where I have an issue with it, is that we do try and treat everyone the same, which what it's like for tier one companies, I'm not quite sure. But for us, it's very, very difficult to monitor every single customer on an hourly basis, especially when those same customers appear all the time. So we have, as I say, a number of reports being run constantly, and we've got a team looking at those reports on an hourly basis.
Yeah, trying to pick out things that stand out. I presume this person's deposited a large sum of money. Maybe he's deposited 4 figures on multiple occasions in the same day, for example. Yeah.
Then obviously we'll find out how have we got the customer, what are they betting on, what time are they betting on. So it might be that a customer comes in, deposits £1,000 and it happens to be good with racing today, so they might have their first bet at £1,000. That will be flagged to us. We would treat that customer completely different if someone deposits £1,000 and start playing on a casino. So you've then got to look at what they're betting on. Are they betting on a 1 to 4 shot, or have they had £1,000 on a 25 to 1 on a shot? And then you obviously try and build a picture. You're continually risk assessing each customer, and you're relying on everyone in your operation to do that. That includes traders, that includes customer service, who are continually monitoring. Everything out of the ordinary happens, and Star are known for taking big bets. We've still got to run those checks. So it does affect the customer journey, because if someone wants to say have their first bet at £10,000, they're almost certainly might be able to have that one bet, and it depends. But after that, they then got to run through more checks, and then we start coming into the affordability, money laundering checks, which I'm sure we'll go into. So we do try and treat every customer the same.
How does that differ? Obviously, you're always seeing online. How does that differ in shops or on course?
Shops have got triggers, which we've bought into. So again, the shops is more cash is probably the issue with shops is cash betting. A lot of people don't carry cash anymore. So if someone wants to come in and have a cash bet in our side of the retail, they will be asked certain questions. And unfortunately, because there's no strict guidance across the industry with all this, is that that if you ask a certain question of a customer with, say, wants to deposit £1,000 in one shop, and he doesn't want to do it or doesn't like to do it, you know where he's going to go. He's going to go down the road. And I think that's probably my biggest frustration working in this industry, is we're not all singing off the same hymn sheet. And I've got some figures that I can share with you later on if you want to hear them. I will get a customer to turn up today who might be a large staking customer who was probably with someone yesterday.
I see.
And had to go through certain checks, doesn't want to do them or can't do them or doesn't feel that he wants to provide it. And he turns up on my doorstep. And likewise, when he hits our thresholds, at some point in the journey, I'll be asking him the same questions and he'll move on to somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably my biggest issue with the whole industry, is that we're all not singing off the same hymn sheet.
Yeah, and maybe other firms don't have the same standards perhaps that you are employing, or the same
more stringent standards, and they might not be doing any checks at all. I mean, my analogy is, it's the pub landlord who has a very, very busy pub who allows drugs, allows under 18s, doesn't have any fire precautions, doesn't really care where he goes, has a really, really busy pub, and you've got a pub down the road whose landlord is very, very strict at age verification, doesn't allow drugs, does everything proper, and he's got an empty pub. And the person down the road is making a fortune, and he will carry on doing that until he decides he either gets caught or gets picked up by the authorities, or he decides, I've made my money now. That's the issue I've got with the industry, is that I know that if I close a customer, no matter who it is, whether it's for social responsible gambling or for money laundering or for proof of funds affordability, I'd say 99% of those are going to open up somewhere else tomorrow.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What would you be looking for? I know there has been chat about, especially online, like a single customer view, single customer wallet, but the fear is that data will be targeted and used and abused by like the tier one firms that you talk about, especially who are gathering lots of data. What would your solution to that be, or what would your ideal?
There's a lot of scaremongering out there about what people do with the data. And I think I've been in the industry 5 years, and I'm head of a sort of all-party sort of gambling forum that we meet every quarter. And I think firms have probably abused data. They still may be. I don't. This is just my opinion. But you've read over the years that people were targeting people who were self-excluded and emailing them, and firms are denying they're doing it. And I'm sure there were firms that were doing it, and they run the risk of maybe in court, but will they get business out of it? I think any firm who does that now is crazy, because it doesn't take very much to get caught, and you get reported, and quite right, you'll have your wrist slapped and probably worse. So we're not singing all off the same hymn sheet, and I know that we're not a tier one. People we use as most people have got multiple accounts, and again, I'm a gambler myself. I might have an account with, say, I won't name names, a bookmaker A, and I lose £2,000 in a month, and I'm probably on their social responsible gambling radar, or I might be treated as a VIP because I'm losing £2,000 a month. But I might be, but with bookmaker B, I might be winning £1,800 a month because I've lost 2,000 on one firm, but I've won 1,800, and they might be restricting me.
Yeah.
And they haven't got any social responsible gambling issues with me because I'm winning, and I'm not putting any flags up. And this is the same. We're talking about an individual here with two different betting companies who've got completely two different risk assessments on that customer. One, social responsible gambling, maybe VIP. The other one is, he's winning too much, we're going to let him bet 5p.
Yeah.
And it's an individual. So this single customer view is a great concept. If it worked, it'd have to be an enormous great computer. It'd have to feed in so much data, and everyone's data would have to be the same. I just cannot see it actually being plausible, because it'd have to be in real time, because the data you get has to be up to date.
Yeah.
We could have someone, in this time of this interview, someone might have lost £5,000 on the casino who joined at 3 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
For all I know, we'd have picked it up. We'll be doing social responsible gambling. We'll be looking at but £3,000 in 15 minutes is doable on a casino.
Yeah.
That's actually doable, sports gambling. But he might be a very wealthy individual. He might have actually self-excluded himself from a firm yesterday, and I'm treating him as a great customer. He might win £5,000 casino, and all of a sudden he's deposited £3,000. He's won £5,000. And he's, this is a bad customer because he's winning money off us. And I think that's something that the gambling industry, it's almost like a winning customer is a bad customer. And it shouldn't be viewed like that. You're going to have winners.
Yeah.
And yet, that person might have self-excluded themselves from an account at 2:45 because they've lost a load of money. It might be because that firm's interjected, suspended his account, asked the questions. Person said, I've got a gambling problem, blah, blah, blah. They do it and they get rid of that business, quite rightly. But 15 minutes later, he's opened up another account, because that's how quick it can be done.
Yeah. And then obviously the knock-on issue is then if he has self-excluded and he loses a lot of money, he could then say that and try and claim those funds back, I presume.
We've got a subject, maybe we want to talk about that later on, but I think that firm who has stopped that person gambling, that person might have stopped themselves, or that person might have interjected, done a social responsible interaction. The person's actually thought, okay, I've just spent X amount of money in so many minutes and I can't afford it and I want to self-exclude. They do the right thing. They get rid of that account, quite rightly, and then there's nothing stopping that person opening up an account just down the road. Again, back to my pub thing, my landlord tells me, I think you've drunk too much this week, Lee. I'm not going to serve you any more beer. And I go, okay, thank you very much. And I walk next door and get served by somebody else. And it defeats the object of him actually trying to look after me. I think you're drinking too much, Lee. I'm not going to serve you anymore. Even though it's my profits, I'm not going to serve you more. I'm thinking you're doing all right. I think you should go home. I'll book your taxi and I walk next door and I start drinking again. And I think the knock-on effect of a lot of this is people jump from A to B to C to D to E. And no matter what firms are doing, it isn't actually getting to the root of the problem.
No, that's true. People are unable to stop people drinking to excess if they so desire, because if a pub won't serve you, well, you can always go to the off license. You can always pick up and access alcohol. And it's very similar with betting. We'll probably talk about this as well, that there is a burgeoning black market as well. So they don't run, they won't be running any affordability checks on their customers.
So getting back to your point about the single customer view is a great concept, but you're going to have every single betting firm feeding every single thing into a supercomputer in real time.
Yeah.
And it won't take into account of people winning. See, another thing you've got here is I might deposit £10 and win £10,000 on a football bet, and I don't withdraw that money. So how is that going to be recorded?
Yeah, of course.
That would have to be fed into a supercomputer, say, Lee's deposited 10 quid, no one cares, but actually he's won 10,000. Only going to be then registered if I withdraw the 10,000, which then flags to another firm that I've got £10,000 now. Mm-hmm. But actually no one's done any actual financial checks for me because I only deposited 10 quid.
Yeah.
To how this single customer view would have to have so many strands to it, I just can't see it working, personally. Then I'm on.
Yeah, well, that's why I think that one of the concept of the wallet was kind of floated, and working with perhaps banking partners to find, that itself perhaps would be a concern too, but to have a single wallet, if you like, a single location whereby there is tracking of the customers. You need to have that wallet to bet. Effectively, it would be your ticket to go and bet, and you'd fund and deposit and withdraw and whatever through that, and it would keep a check on your balance. But again, it would still require a fair amount of data to be synced up in real time.
It's an amazing amount of data, Peter, because I could refeed in that wallet from wherever, or who decides how much my wallet should be.
Yes.
I've just deposited £10 and I earn £100 a week, and I deposited £10 and I win 10 grand. All of a sudden, I'm a different animal now. I've got £10,000 at my disposal. Now, is it right that firms will encourage me to deposit that £10,000, or do I actually want to self-exclude and keep the £10,000 and pay off the credit card that they didn't even know I had? And I think it would have to be how you'd actually, if it did come in, whoever designed it would be a genius, but actually how you'd get the results out of it, it has to be literally, because as you know, on a spin on a casino, it's seconds. My thing is, if it works, it has to work properly. It has to do what it's supposed to do. If it doesn't actually do what it's supposed to do, then it's pointless having it.
Yeah, of course. It's really interesting to hear that from a bookmaking side, certainly, because the practicality of it. And I suppose the lack of standards, you talked about that earlier then, the lack of a protocol or a kind of standards for which to work within, to say, like, these are the targets and this is the thresholds, this is how you should perform and how you overview your customers, must also be part of this issue, whereby each firm has a different approach. Therefore, people will just will juggle and switch between different companies based upon the flexibility and the leeway that they give them or not. So that all feeds into that. So I wanted to ask you about the checks, because KYC, I think most people know that's just someone's identity. Obviously, you talked about their age and where they live. Check that they have the physical location, and you have their basic identity and address information. But then one of the other checks, and this comes up regularly, it seems to come up regularly as a reason for bookmakers to prevent customers, punters that win money or have winnings to withdraw, to prevent them from receiving it, is all these extra checks. And I've had a few emails today from people saying, I've requested withdrawal 2 weeks ago. I'm not getting it. I'm not getting any information. information, they say they need to run extra checks. Now, obviously, KYC, they can run at different points, it seems. The anti-money laundering, though, is a different one. And that sometimes is potentially what they're looking for. But how common is AML checks, and what do you actually start to look for at that point?
Right. This is quite difficult, really, because when I started, I'd heard things that bookmakers were making people jump through hoops. Now, my stance will start, whether my owners like it or not, but they've never insisted, is if we take the bet, we pay the bet. That is my stance. And I'll tell you now that we have, in 5 years, we have never lost an IBAS case.
Okay.
Never. So my stance is I was taking people to court. So I've started right from afresh. If I can't go in front of a judge and justify why I've done something, I won't be in front of the judge. The customer wins.
Yeah.
So if I'm not going to win that case in court, the customer wins. So if we failed in whatever reason, so if we've taken a bet today for £50 and it wins £14,000 tomorrow, that person will be paid.
Yeah.
There won't be any, can you send me this? Can you send me that? We might ask for it afterwards, but we pay the bet.
Yeah.
We take the money in good faith, and that will be on a lot of our responses to people who organise. We take the money in good faith and we pay in good faith. That's the stance that I think bookmakers should take. There are going to be exceptions to that because there are going to be people who we think may be fraudulent, we think might be using someone else's details because they're linked to a self-excluded card or whatever. But I have to justify why I'm asking that. And that to me is justifying that to a court of law or the police.
Yeah.
So I'm not just going to make a person jump through hoops because I don't want to pay them £3,000 or £8,000. They all get paid. Every case that's gone to IBAS, we've never lost because they won't go to IBAS. They don't go to IBAS because we settle them. We settle them if we're in the wrong in any way, the customer wins. And that's the only way customers should be treated. There might be people listening on here who might have had an account with Star and might say that's rubbish. I would argue that. I'm very rigid on this. Whether it's for a fiver or 50 grand, it doesn't matter what the amount is. We do the right thing by the customer unless I can justify otherwise.
Yeah.
We've had people who've deposited £500 who've won £40,000 in a day and they get paid. We've actually asked them for the KYC docs. We might ask them for their bank card, etc., etc. But they then go, hold on a minute, you took this. I mean, we paid you. We've actually paid you. Anyway, we're asking this afterwards.
It seems to be, Leila, the argument or the feedback from other people are getting from perhaps some of the other firms is they're asking for extra information. They're suggesting there's AML issues, there's KYC issues. They're trying to find reasons to duck.
I'm putting my head above the parapet here. Then you should have taken the bet in the first place.
Well, I agree.
We will take bets that subsequently, when we see them, might be from a fraudulent account. But were we aware at the time? No. Well, how am I aware now? Just because the bet's settled and the horse has won, what's the difference between that horse going over the line and the bet being placed? There's no difference.
Yeah.
I would, and this is where I would say, if I pick that up, it might be while the horse is running, but I've picked it up and then I'm going to make the customer jump through hoops, but not just because it's won. Because the issue I've got of all this is if that horse lost, would I be asking the question?
That's the issue, yeah, because they're not running these checks on losing accounts.
And this is where I think the industry in itself hasn't done itself any favours, because if I lose £100 a week with Bookmaker A for the last 3 years, I'm recreational, I've never hit any flags, I've never done anything, and I'm a great customer because I've lost 15,000 quid over the last 3 years, and all of a sudden I happen to get lucky on a Saturday and I win 12,000. I would go crazy if I was asked to. You're quite happily taking my money and not asking me for extra, but as soon as I win, and I have heard that, and I do know it goes on. I've seen IBAS complaints from other firms. I've listened to one of your blogs where a person said that, and I just thought, well, I'd be horrified, and I wouldn't be able to justify, and especially if I've got a customer who's been with us a couple of years, unless I can actually look at him in the face and say, I'm not paying you this because of X, Y, Z. He gets paid. We shouldn't be making people. The experience is hard enough as it is. So, if someone genuinely wins, unless you've got a reason not to pay them, and it's against the LCCP, that you can't ask for something after the fact, unless you have a justifiable reason. Now, the justifiable reason is, I'm not sure it's your card, or I'm not sure. I'm sure it's not your card. That's why I'm asking for it. I think it might not be. If anyone had any queries, they'd say, why have you asked for this? I would happily justify why I've asked for it. And I would prove why I've asked for X, Y, and Z. And as long as I can justify why I've done it, because if someone does go to IBAS, they are going to ask, why have you done this? And if I thought it might be this, or I thought that's not good enough, as far as I'm concerned. And that's the stance we take.
Well, it's refreshing to hear, because the accusation and like what you're saying, you're hearing issues yourself, is that some of these bigger firms are gaming the system by delaying, by making life difficult, whether it be customer service, trying to get a response to a query, trying to find out IBAN numbers, things like this. And they're gaming the system because they know there's a proportion of customers, especially perhaps lower amounts, whereby they're waiting for 2-figure, 3-figure sums perhaps, where people will give up and they won't take them to court, or they won't open an IBAS case. It's just beyond some people's desire or ability to think, well, taking a bookmaker to a small claims court or IBAS is a little bit, some people will be put off by that idea, won't they?
Then, Peter, to be honest, they shouldn't need to.
No.
We do make mistakes, but, there'll be somewhere we would have got it wrong, and we'll have to backtrack and go, actually, we were wrong there. And as I say, we've never lost an IBAS case. We haven't had many because they don't get that far.
Yeah.
But if he's going to IBAS, he's going to IBAS, and I'll happily defend it. And as I say, that's why we've never lost. But in a proportion, I don't know what proportion of other bookmakers have, but we probably had, in 5 years, I've probably had 30, if that.
Yeah.
And we won them all.
I suppose what you mentioned there as well, it's part of the license. It's on the Gambling Commission website. You can't undertake any checks at the withdrawal stage you could have reasonably asked for earlier. But the issue is that if you have that, this is a regular concern that gets put to me. I've seen it myself. If I go and say you're delaying this payment, you can't ask for this information at withdrawal. And if I go and contact the Gambling Commission, they don't take any active interest in that particular case. They say you have to liaise with the bookmaker, who think, well, I can get away with murder because nobody's overseeing it. So that's part of the issue, is that there's no enforcement, it seems, on issues like this, or standards for things like customer service. Dealing with one customer who's dealing with, I won't name the firm, but he says he's been waiting 2 weeks and he has to rely on live chat. The live chat cuts out. He can't get an answer. He gets fobbed off every time. And it's just going around in circles and inherently frustrating because there are no standards. So that seems to be what's going on.
There will be cases where you will make the customer run around, only because you know that something is wrong. Not you think something is wrong, you know something is wrong. So there are going to be anomalies to that. But the ones that I hear, I just think, why is someone making you jump through all that when, pay the person out and then ask for it?
Yeah.
And if they decide they don't want to go for it then, if it's fraud, it's a different thing. Or if it's someone who's circumnavigated or whatever, that's a different kind of issue. But you should have picked that up. You can't just decide, I've picked that up 7 days after they've opened. They've been betting with you for 7 days and now I think something's wrong.
Yeah.
That, to me, is an issue that should be addressed from a customer's perspective.
Let's talk about people taking advantage, because let's be honest, like, punters do take the piss. They do try and take advantage. They do try and game the system themselves. And, it's not all one side. Certainly bookmakers behave poorly at times and we need to call them up, but we also need to call out those punters that are taking advantage. Ben calls them snides. I met with him, he called them snides. People who presumably try and take advantage of some of the rules. Part of your role is looking at fraud and things like that. What do you deal with on this front? Maybe give me some examples of the type of issues that you find from people trying to take advantage.
The problem is it's become, because it's so much in the press now, it's trying to differentiate between, and there's two sides here. There's people who are bypassing self-exclusions or GamStop, or people using third-party cards, i.e. their partner. There is a difference, because someone might be, as an example, I'm a gambler and I can't get on, so I decide to open up in your name. And you're legitimate and there's no issues. How the bookmaker's going to know that? If they continue to take your bets and you've gone through your age verification, there's not really much I can do about that. I will probably trade your account out, or because I'm so good I've been blocked. If someone is, a 19-year-old girl happens to be betting £300 on a Henlow dog at 11:04 on a Monday, the likelihood is it's probably not her. But she's passed age verification, sent her KYC docs, that I've got no grounds not to pay that person. That really is like a trading thing. If they don't think it's her, then they need to trade that account accordingly.
Yeah.
However, if she goes through certain things and she doesn't provide A, B, and C, I'll suspend her account and she's got £400 left in it and she's lost 300, you pay her and you close her or whatever. Mm. So that's an issue we have to deal with. And I just consider that someone just bypasses them, probably because their partner or their boyfriend or Their dad has probably had his account restricted and he's using it's third-party ban. We all know what it is.
Yeah.
But I don't see it as a compliance issue, provided they've age verified. There's only when they start hitting triggers, i.e., they'll respond to social responsible gambling, they'll answer all those questions. Then when it comes to affordability, they can't provide it, they don't provide it. And because they're third party, they're probably not going to. They're not money laundering, they're just probably putting on for someone who can't get on. So that's one side of the fence we don't necessarily try to concentrate on too much. The issues we've got are people who are bypassing self-exclusion stroke GamStop.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things been brought in by bookmakers, by GamStop themselves, where they're tools to help, people with gambling issues. And someone decides to self-exclude from Star, that's fine. They've got a gambling issue. My issue with it is that they're not self-excluded from everywhere. So it might be that they're self-excluding because they just don't like the service, they don't want to be contacted by emailers. That is down to them. That's absolutely fine. You'll then have the issue of then they'll try and open up another account a week later.
Yeah.
And they'll change details. And we've obviously got matching systems, but they're not, 100% accurate. So they'll try and bypass the system. They're trying to have a free hit. And if they win, they'll try and withdraw. And they might get away with it, and they might get lucky, and it goes out. And if they lose, it's you've let me gamble, I'm self-excluded, or more blatantly, they'll self-exclude today, and then someone in the same household opens up tomorrow, and they're the sort of things we will be asking extra questions, like Lee Gray self-excludes from Star today, and then Sarah Gray in the same household opens up using a different card in her household tomorrow. Now, we will pick that up. We will look at, is it actually Sarah Gray's card? We may then ask Sarah Gray for extra information, like we want to see the front of the bank card. And if that happens to be in Sarah Gray's name, she can carry on. Because you cannot prove that Lee Gray is managing that account.
Unless you ask for bank statements. Some firms do ask for bank statements, no? They would ask for bank statements from Sarah and try and find payments that have derived from Lee to send and say...
Yeah, but there are other ways of doing it. But although it might well be my account, you can't just presume it is. And that's, I think, where the difficulty is. And the traders had an issue with this because when it's obviously Lee's account... Well, it's not obvious because I'm sure there are a lot of couples out there who have bookmaker A accounts in different names. One might be betting £50 on a Saturday and the wife might be betting a fiver. You can't just presume. So you take the money in good faith. If it transpires that the card are actually in my name, then you've got someone who's trying to bypass self-exclusion. And that's what we'll deal with a lot, is the people who are trying to circumvent. It's basically, we call them free hitters.
Yeah.
Which is effectively what they're trying to do. If someone self-excluded 3 years ago, they'd opened up in a different address, and bypass will treat them slightly differently. But it's me being able to justify, do I think that this person has deliberately tried to bypass their self-exclusion? Now, I will point out, we're probably one of the most unique firms that I brought in to start with. Anyone who we find has done this, all the bets avoided. In some instances, we'll pay the deposits back to the customer, but in most instances, we will forfeit the deposits and we donate it all to charity.
Okay.
So if someone bypasses and deposits £500 and it's deliberate, and we regard it as deliberate, we'll tell the customer, these are our terms and conditions, you deliberately bypass your self-exclusion, your bet's avoided. Now, if they've won, their bet's avoided and their £500 goes to charity. And if they've lost the 500 quid and asked them money, that 500 quid still goes to charity.
I see.
We don't make any money at all out of any of these customers. And that's something that I was quite... whether people agree, I was quite proud of that fact. It's not, the bookmaker said, if I'd have lost, you'd have kept my money, but if I'd have won, you're going to keep it anyway. Yeah, if you won, you aren't going to get the money, but if you lose, we're not having it either. Yeah. We're not giving it back to you because you deliberately, now again, there's a judgment call whether it's deliberate or accidental, and that will be the test of time on each case, but we don't keep any of that money.
Okay.
It goes to charity every month.
How common are these kind of issues? Daily, yeah.
At least daily, yeah.
Yeah, I see.
And obviously, we've got another licence that we can't actually cross over the information. And I know damn well that they'll open up on another licence. And they will. And unfortunately, this is the problem with all of this, is trying to look at the people who have genuinely got problems, of which there are a lot out there, and there's a lot more that can be done for them. There are people out there using this to have free hits. Yeah. Now, I can't tell you whether they're problem gamblers who can't stop themselves, or whether they're not problem gamblers at all, but are just going from each firm, just trying to have a free hit. We will get emails from customers who will list a load of points and you've let me do this, and this. And A, they've not even got an account with us and they've got confused. Or B, they will quote stuff in that isn't relevant to their account at all. They've never even done what they're actually saying. So what they're actually doing is they're sending the same email out to 10 betting firms. And this happens a lot. And unfortunately, there is nothing to stop them doing it. And it will continue. But I can't ask them the question, are you a genuine person with a gambling problem, or are you actually just trying to have a free hit? It's very hard to distinguish because you can't actually phone up and ask them that question. Mm-hmm. But that happens daily. We'll also have the issue with people who we will send them the affordability.
Let's talk about affordability, Lee. I want to ask you about affordability. What's Star Sports' approach to it?
I'll give you a statistic on social responsible gambling, the interactions we do. Again, we're a smaller firm, so we could do it. We don't just send out block emails to people.
Yeah,
they have to be responded to within a week or they're suspended. Whereas I know I don't like doing things as a tick box exercise. If I'm going to interact with someone, I need to actually do it for the purpose that it's there for. So any firm can send out an email to every single customer saying, these are the tools, and I'm not criticising it because there's still an addition, but these are the tools that are available, X, Y, Z. I've had one social responsible gambling email in my 30 odd years of gambling, and I didn't spot it for 4 months because it was in my junk, and it didn't need a response to, so it was irrelevant anyway to me. But all of ours, they have to be responded to within at most a week or their account suspended. And in our time of being online, 69% of the people that we've interacted with no longer bet with us. And now that'd be a great thing because I'd love to say that 69% of those people never bet again because we interacted with them. But I'd imagine 99% of that 69% probably opened up to someone else the following day.
Your life is too difficult with Star Sports, so I'll go and choose another firm where they're not quite as...
Some people find it painful. Some people might think, I am gambling too much. And I'm going to take note of this email and I'm actually going to put deposit limits, or I'm actually going to self-exclude, or I'm actually going to go to GamStar. And that's great. Mm-hmm. But they self-exclude from Star. It doesn't stop them self-excluding from Bookmaker A because they can open up an account tomorrow. So it almost slightly feels like it's defeating the object of what the purpose is because someone can always go somewhere else.
Yeah, I know Star Sports don't do this, but from an overview of the bookmaking industry, from a purely profit point of view, there might be some firms who look at that and think, if we are less hot on things like this, we'll make more profit because these customers are profitable. Obviously, there's a balance, and perhaps I'm being unfair, but that is...
Unfortunately, I've laid awake at night thinking this sort of thing that, if we didn't do these interactions, we would get more business. Now, not all these people are losing. Some of these people are actually winning. Yeah. But, a large majority will be losers. We've flagged up that they've got issues with their account, whether they keep asking for free bets, or they've got payment declines, or they hit certain financial triggers, or there's something that, their betting pattern becomes erratic. We interact with them, and 69%, we lose their business. Now, the businessman in me would think, well, if I didn't do any, I'd have a lot more customers. And if I don't care about any of these people, then I'd make more money. Yeah. Now, this is where there's a difference between the bookmaking industry has got to actually take a step back and think, actually, what are we doing? And are we doing it for the right reasons? If we're doing it for the right reasons, ultimately, that's what we should be doing it for, not to tick a box or to worry about profits for the shareholders. Is actually doing the right thing. But on the flip side of that is if I then go and open up an account with someone else, I've defeated the object of actually doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. Because they're just betting somewhere else. I'm moving the problem on.
Indeed. I asked about affordability. There's something else that's perhaps pushing punters away from certain firms who have more stringent rules. These affordability checks, I would love to know what your take on what you do at Star Sports, how it all works, and just your thoughts on them in general.
This is an absolute minefield because there's no strict rules around it. We have financial thresholds where we will ask the question. They have a week to respond. You're never going to get this right, no matter how, because I'm not a forensic accountant. We will require from somebody a document that shows they can afford what they have lost, or won, to be fair. We will do affordability on people who win. Now, that's not impossible to actually get perfectly right, just because, say for me, for instance, I haven't got a mortgage. I'm just giving you an example. I've got no mortgage. I earn $3,000. I take home £3,000 a month. I've got no mortgage. no children, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't go out anywhere, and I've got £3,000 gambling. So my source of funds, and with Star Sports, have source of funded me, and I've lost £2,000 each month for the last 5 months. So I've hit a trigger, and I send him my wage slip. And is that wage slip justifiable? No, am I going to ask the question of, has Lee got a mortgage? Has he got an electricity bill? Does he pay X? Has he got a car? Actually, my affordability is, I own £3,000. Can I afford to lose £2,000? Well, actually, I can. Mm-hmm. But actually, on paper, trying to justify that I can lose £2,000. Now, the problem is that I'm being source of funded affordability on Star, but on Sky, I won't miss over. On Bookmaker B, yeah, I only bet 50 quid with them on all their bonuses. And actually, I've never done an affordability check with Bookmaker A. But on Bookmaker C, I've also got an account with. I decided to have £4,000 on the next Prime Minister at 1 to 5 on. Yeah. So I've got 3 different accounts. So affordability-wise, I would have to get all that information. How did I fund the £4,000 bet? I might have 3 different bank accounts. I might have £1 million in savings. We're trying to do it is we need to see sufficient information to show you're affordable. So Lee Gray loses £2,000 in a month and my wages are only £1,800. The evidence provided isn't sufficient to warrant that £2,000 a month. But I might have won £12,000 for another firm 3 months ago. Yeah. I might have a wife or a partner who earns £1 million a year. So, and you've got people who've got investments, you've got people who've got income, so actually you're trying to make it so can you justify your affordability, but I don't want your whole life, because people are not going to supply. Especially if you're a wealthy individual, you're not going to send a bookmaker, these are my 15 bank accounts I've got. These are my 10 ISAs. These are all my private pension funds. This is what my wife's... No one's going to do it. No. So all we try and do is get enough that's sufficient to warrant the spend they're doing, whether that be losing £10,000 in a month or £10,000 in a year. Obviously, the information we require is a lot less if someone's losing £10,000 a year than if someone loses £10,000 in, say, a week. They will need to show that they can afford to lose that. You then got to try and look at what they're actually gambling on. Yeah. And if they've got 5 other accounts, my affordability that I'm doing just for Star becomes almost irrelevant because he's got 4 other accounts that I'm unaware of that he might be winning on. You've also got the point is the affordability is only in as good as the day you get it. Yeah. I can show you my affordability. I've got £1 million in my bank account today. And Star Sports are really out of our business because Lee's got £1 million that you can actually waste on gambling or spend or whatever. And actually, I might go and buy a house tomorrow for £1 million and tomorrow I haven't got any money. So the documents that I provided today aren't worth the paper they're written on.
So, Lee, you really need a holistic view of everything, the financial picture from across the board, and some suggestion about some of the soft credit or credit checks or things like that, where banking and the overview of the credit or whatever it might be of the individual. Do you think there's a better solution than currently in place?
Well, the soft credit check, which we are having built at the moment, we've got it up and running. We don't know what the thresholds are going to set out yet, but that will block people from gambling. They will hit a certain threshold, we will run a certain check, and if they come up with a score of 1 out of 10, that'll be it gone. Yeah. Now, that's my concern, is that person might just be betting £5 a week. Now, I'm not saying that everyone can afford £5 a week, but some people decide they're not going to go to a pub on a Friday and say they've had their football bet on a Friday, but they'll be stopped from gambling. If they have bad credit, now, again, who am I to say that why should someone not be able to spend, even if they have had CCJs or are in financial, to spend a fiver on the football on a Saturday or whatever? I just think we're in a bit of danger here of actually knocking a lot of people out, some for the right reasons, but some will think, hold on, I really look forward to my £5 a weekend, just like someone might afford, use their last £10 a week to go bingo on a Sunday. Mm-hmm. And I think the thresholds that are being talked about, to do an holistic view at the thresholds that are being banded around, I think will help protect some, definitely, but I do think we're in danger of knocking out a lot of people who just want to... They might have the worst credit in the world and have no money at all, but they don't stop them going having a pint in a pub, which where I live is £6. Yeah. It's £6 a pub. And there's no one there stopping them doing that. Likewise, me and you could go and book a £30,000 cruise on a credit card tomorrow And I'm sure the travel agent isn't going to go, can you afford the 30 grand you just put it on this credit card for this cruise? And it might cost you 40 grand to repay it. They're not going to worry. All they're worried about is that money going to be authorised? And if it is, they don't care. So this affordability issue, if done properly, but again, if I've got 10 accounts across 10 firms, as I say, I might be win on one, lose on one, I've used no one, then it almost becomes, I'm not allowed to share the information that I find on that customer. So is it actually doing what it's supposed to do? Because I just think this affordability check, there's rumours of black market in that. I'm not so sure. I just think people will have more accounts and they will have to become more like accountants to make sure that they don't, because the thresholds will be published. It'll be like, your money laundering bill. If you get caught with over £1,000 cash on you and you can't justify where you got it from, it can be confiscated and you're in court the following day to justify where it is. I just think people will be looking at going, right, the threshold is, was it £2,000 over 3 months, they think it is?
90 days, yeah.
You're going to have a lot of people depositing £1,900 on 10 accounts.
Yeah.
Or you don't withdraw. See, another thing that hasn't been really looked at, this whole thing about deposit limits and what have you, I think it will also encourage people not to withdraw until the end of the month.
Yeah, well, exactly. I'm mindful of that already with affordability checks. It's something I am aware of, and I know other people are. Don't withdraw, especially if you made a bit of cash, but you know you're vulnerable to variance and losing runs. And usually you'd use that in your favour. You continue to deposit in certain accounts, and that account is viewed up positively, even though your other account, you're steaming ahead and you've made more than enough to cover that loss. So it circles back to the same issue we were talking about earlier, isn't it?
But you've got to think, it's the fact that withdrawals were banned from being cancelled, a year, 2 years ago, which I totally agree with. But actually, did anyone actually look at the fact as how many withdrawals are not requested because they can't cancel withdrawal? So it's actually, I've got £100 in my betting account, I'm going to withdraw it. Hold on a minute. A, you've got this deposit rule, and you actually B, if I can't, they won't let me cancel, I won't ask for the withdrawal in the first place.
Yeah.
And you'll end up running these things on like overdraft accounts. If you've got a £500 a month deposit limit, some people out there will stick to that £500. They won't withdraw. And at the end of the month, from the 31st, they'll withdraw their 2,700 quid that they've accumulated over the month. And then the following day, they'll deposit 500 quid. Well, that actually is defeating the object of what the whole purpose of it is. Because that isn't an affordability check. That's actually just someone running like a bank account. And if I deposited 500 and I can't use that account again, I'll go and I want to have a bet tomorrow on X, I'll open up an account somewhere else.
Yeah. And if it's 90 days, you would, like you say, be an accountant. You think I can lose 2,000 in 90 days. And even if you're not using certain accounts to the same extent, you might think, well, I'm past the threshold. I might as well chuck another grand in because I might need that in a couple of months' time. And it just becomes gaming the system and circumnavigating these limits because rather than actually they're perhaps what they're useful for. I was going to ask you as well, we've been chatting a good while now, and I thank you for your time. And it's been really interesting to understand your point of view. What would your solution be? Let's say, Lee, you used to be a civil servant. Let's say, whoever the new Prime Minister is picks up the phone and says, I want you to be in charge of fixing the mess in the betting world, to oversee the white paper. What would your idea be? What would you look to implement?
From an operator's point of view, to stop social responsible gambling is very, very important, but to stop the people abusing it, my want is that I would like us to be able to report customers to a centralised computer system that stops people opening up accounts of anyone else from a bookmaker perspective. So, I've got a gambling problem. You've let me lose £3,000. This is outrageous, I want my money back. If I do end up paying that person back for whatever reason, I would then not want them to be able to do that with anyone else. So I would like to be able to report that person. The person's declared they got a gambling issue. It would then wheedle out the people who've actually got gambling issues, who are actually people who are just using that as a way of getting their money back. So if you're going to use that, or it might hurt a few people, but if you're going to use that, you've got to be aware that you'll be reported and you'll be blocked from ever opening up a bank account again. That's from what I would like. From a customer's perspective, I think other than IBAS, there needs to be a social responsible gambling stroke. You've maybe jumped through loads of hoops ombudsman.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely a need because IBAS aren't really interested in you broke social responsible gambling rules or proof of funds rules because there aren't actually any rules around that. There's no law.
No.
It's just every firm does it differently. And ultimately, I don't have to do any of this. I might be breaching my license, but actually there's nothing written down on when I should do it and what I should do it. So I think there's definitely a need for, I wouldn't want to work on it, by the way, but there's definitely a need for an ombudsman for the customer, for them to say, you know, if I've been betting with Joe Blogs for 2 years, I won £3,700 last week, and now I've had to do this. And I think even having that ombudsman might bookmakers actually think, actually, I'm wrong doing this. I shouldn't be doing it. I don't want it to go to the ombudsman, and actually, I'm going to pay the customer. So from a customer perspective, definitely an ombudsman who will deal with responsible gambling, you know, and almost culminating in why is bookmaker A getting 1,000 complaints a month, and yet all the other ones are getting 1,000 between them. You know, there must be an issue. And then even reporting that to the Gambling Commission.
Yeah.
You know, instead of them just randomly picking on a firm that might have breached it once or 3 times or even 10 times, is actually, we've had 2,000 complaints this month and 1,200 of them are from bookmaker A because they reneged on a bonus or they did X, Y, Z. And looking at the trends of what companies are actually doing.
No, that makes sense. There's no deterrent at the moment, is there? So that makes sense to...
I don't know how the Gambling Commission work on complaints, but I'm sure that if they get enough about a specific firm, it might rise a red flag, but they might have already interviewed, they might have already done them a year ago or whatever. But I just think an ombudsman, an independent ombudsman, you know, who should have, you know, from, you know, maybe punters on there, maybe bookmakers on there, and actually might get some good out of it. Maybe this is the direction we should be going in, not necessarily the direction we're currently going in. Because some people think there's a lot of issues out there. Well, I look at some of the issues that are bandied around in the press, and I think, well, that isn't an issue for me at all. But there might be really important issues that no one's actually looked at. Mm-hmm. And an ombudsman may see an oversight of how many complaints they're getting. Actually, are we targeting an affordability check that actually might only affect 500 customers, but actually this issue is affecting 100,000. So maybe we should be concentrating on this line of the customer journey rather than that one. But I think at the moment it's a bit hodgepodge.
Yeah, and with no particular standards and no set ways of doing things, and perhaps oversight, which wraps people on the knuckles or encourages and praises when they do things right.
Yeah,
you created this issue, which is a bit of a hodgepodge, and they're grasping at solutions that might sound good on paper, like affordability checks, but in theory, as you've spoken about, full of holes and full of issues, and could actually just make the whole thing even worse.
And there are a lot of people out there who aren't going to provide this stuff. Now, what are they going to do? Star is known for taking big bets. We have got high value clients. They have to be treated the same as everyone else.
Yeah.
Do they like doing it? One of probably the main issues is if every firm asked for these, there wouldn't be so much backlash. Because I will have a customer who will say, I've been with Bookmaker A for 20 years and they've never asked for this. And yet I've been with you 3 days and you've asked this. This is outrageous. And actually my answer then probably is going to be, well, it's probably because Bookmaker A has asked for it 3 days after 20 years.
Yeah.
You've now decided not to provide it. Now you're with us. And you almost know that's why they're with you. They've turned up on your doorstep because they've been asked. They haven't just appeared. They're 58 years old and appeared, I'm going to start gambling today. They've probably been gambling for quite a long time. They've been betting with a bookmaker. They really got on well with them. All of a sudden, the bookmakers thought, we better ask a question. They don't like the question. They close their account and then they move on to another bookmaker. And likewise, anyone who fails our affordability checks or whatever, who just doesn't want to provide them, will go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
definitely.
Just like the pub analogy, isn't it? And it's interesting that there's no such clamour for drinking checks or eating checks or whatever it might be, health issues and other things that do impact people. So it's very hard to apply it to just betting, but then not apply it to other industries which cause harm.
And I agree with the principles. I totally agree that something needs to be done, but I'm not sure what will come out if and when it comes out will do what it wants it to do. Now, that's my concern. Anything that is a positive for the customer to look at gambling harm and to look at affordability is a great thing, but it needs to actually do what it's supposed to do, what it says on the tin. There's no point in paying lip service to it. There's no point in just making it, we bought in this, we bought in that. If actually it doesn't actually solve any problems, then you're wasting everyone's time, including the customers out there who are going to be affected by this, whether they have got gambling issues or they haven't.
Exactly.
They're all going to be put into the same bracket.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's been refreshing to talk to you later here. You say so many things that I think people listening as well will resonate with them, with some of the things you talked about and the checks and how you oversee things. But certainly definitely interesting as well to learn about the issues that you face, some of the fraudulent activity and some of the problems that you come across, especially as well, things dealing with affordability and how all that works from you. So I thank you ever so much for your time. I enjoy Star Sports content. Obviously, it was on the Betting People video recently, but that's not the reason I think quite highly. I do enjoy Star Sports and what you put out. And, the fact that you've come on today and you've spoken so honestly and frankly about how things work behind the scenes, because not many firms would do that. And I think it's a testament to you and the company that's at Star Sports for taking the time out.
And to Ben.
And to Ben. Yeah, let's not give him too much credit. No, Ben's a great guy. And it's great to see Star Sports doing so well, especially in the very competitive bookmaking industry. It's hard to be one of the smaller fish, isn't it? So thank you ever so much, lady. Thank you. That's really, really interesting.
Thanks, Peter. Take care.